Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirbisesa Sunyavadi Paschat Desa Tarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I welcome for reading Prabhupada Lilamrita. Now we are on chapter 24, the new Jagannath Puri. Am I right? So now this situation, here we got a brief description yesterday about Upendra Prabhu. He was sharing how his dealings and experiences, all these things, he was revealing his heart to Prabhupada, and he became brahmachari. Not yet brahmachari in the sense that at least he started living in the temple, and Linda becomes Lilavati. Lilavati becomes Prabhupada's personal cook, right? And she was experienced. When become Upendra. Yeah, yesterday we read that Prabhupada says love is for Krishna. Now the New York subject matter is beginning again. So Prabhupada said, devotee said that he's asking for $5,000 to be transferred, so that to make the deal. And Prabhupada acknowledged you can spend in any way, but it is my duty to give you advice as ever well-wisher. The money and the society is yours, Srila Prabhupada acknowledged. That's a very nice statement, isn't it? You all see this statement? The money and society is yours. You can spend in any way, but it is my duty to give you the advice as ever well-wisher. So Prabhupada gives the ownership and responsibility that it's you. That's very nice. Then Mr. Price invited Brahmananda to meet Mr. Hall, and he suggested the Brahmananda come prepared with a check for $5,000. On the way, Mr. Price explained that Mr. Hall was perhaps the biggest real estate dealer in Manhattan, a multimillionaire. He owned skyscrapers. Everything he owned was big. When Brahmananda entered Mr. Hall's office, he thought it was right out of a Hollywood movie. A conference room 10 times bigger than the 2nd Avenue Temple room. And seated at the head of the large oval table was Mr. Hall himself. The room was in semi-darkness with a few spotlights on Mr. Hall, who sat before a battery of telephones. Even as they began to discuss, Mr. Hall paused several times, picking up phones and talking to persons in various places across the country. Young man, Mr. Hall said to Brahmananda, we are helping you to get the house. It is a beautiful house, a New York City landmark. Then Mr. Hall's girlfriend called from a boat in the Caribbean. He talked to her for a while and then returned to Brahmananda and Mr. Price, who sat in the shadows at his conference table. What do you all think? What is going to come up? Isn't it suspense? Let's see what comes up. Mr. Hall had a big contract he wanted Brahmananda to sign. Brahmananda knew that Swamiji wanted a contract, and here it was. He also knew that if he signed over the 5,000, he would have no other money and no extra income. And he knew they knew it. But Swamiji wanted the building. Swamiji himself had looked at 100,000 buildings and had offered to buy them. Even though he had very little money to back his offers up. And Brahmananda always did whatever Swamiji said. So to sign this contract, Brahmananda concluded was an act of faith in Swamiji and Krishna. Isn't that a great thing? That time, Brahmananda Prabhu Swami took risk, a small thing, 100,000 those days, 1960s. Swamiji himself, so he signed with a faith on Swamiji and Krishna. He didn't analytically ask, where will the rest of the money come from? To do so, he thought would be like doubting Swamiji. So here he was in this big time financier's office. It was awesome. The millionaires were going to help. Were going to help. Mr. Price was at Brahmananda's elbow. Mr. Hall was telling Brahmanand that everything was all right. We are going to get you this house. Now it was actually going to happen. Here was one of the biggest men in Manhattan offering to help. And whereas Brahmanand had no money, Mr. Hall would be able to pick up the place very easily from the owner. Glancing quickly over the contract, Brahmanand signed. It was a deal, and he gave them the check of 5,000. As soon as Brahmananda and Mr. Price left Mr. Hall's office, there was a distinct change in Mr. Price. Although still acting as Brahmananda's friend, he now said, "Gee, now you have to get this money." As they walked together on the uptown streets, Mr. Price cheerfully pushed the whole thing into Brahmananda. That was the change. Before, Mr. Price had been saying that he and Mr. Hall were going to do it. But now he said that it was all up to the devotees. Brahmananda asked about the legal position. Mr. Price explained that only the Krishna society was bound. But what about the promises? What about Mr. Hall's being so rich and wanting to help them, and Mr. Price wanting to help? Mr. Price assured Brahmananda that he and Mr. Hall did want to help. They were doing everything they could, but Brahmananda and the other devotees should also do everything they could and come up with that with the 20,000 to complete the down payment by the end of the month. And what if they couldn't? Mr. Price made it very clear. If you don't pay the balance in a month, then you lose the deposit. So he trapped it, right? In one sense, they trapped it. By the time Brahmananda reached 26th Avenue, he realized that he had been cheated. He was crushed. He turned to the other devotees and told them what had happened. But they could only return. Why did you do it? Brahmananda phoned Srila Prabhupada in San Francisco. Now that his eyes had been opened about Mr. Price, Brahmananda was blunt about his mistake. And he told Prabhupada that he had given away the 5,000. All of it is gone, Srila Prabhupada asked. All of it gone? Srila Prabhupada asked. Yeah, Brahmananda replied. He heard Prabhupada hang up the phone. Prabhupada hang up the phone. Brahmananda had been about to explain the whole thing, but Swamiji had just hung up without a word. Brahmananda placed the receiver back on the hook. He was shaken. The next day, the trustees held a special meeting. The boys sat around in the front room of Prabhupada's apartment, trying to decide what to do. Gargmuni again called Prabhupada, who advised them to stop the check at the bank. Swamiji is so as smart as fox. Rayaram smiled. Gargmuni phoned the bank, but it was too late. The check had already been cashed. I didn't feel like so finally the secret is coming up. They were making cheating. Understanding the situation in all this setup he made, Mr. Price was behind to cheat, get the deposit. Influence because these are young boys, but they didn't trust Prabhupada. Prabhupada has a lot of experience. He said this is not doesn't sound to be right. But neo devotees were very much allured, looked like influenced by Mr. Price, and so finally they signed. And now he's opening up. He said, "Well, we're in trouble. Rates come up with $20,000 now. But next month, so he said, what will happen? You lose it. If you don't, you lose it. That's the way that the deal was made it." And he knew that they cannot come up. That's why he was making all these things. So now Brahmananda is, feeling guilty. He's calling Prabhupada. He said, "So long I told you. What is the point of speaking to you?" Then now Gargamuni also calls. Now Prabhupada said, uh, so Brahman, okay, he said, the check, try to cancel the check from the bank. So check since cleared already. Okay, Prasanthi.
They consulted Mr. Goldsmith, their friendly lawyer. He said it sounded like a weak legal case. Price and Hall hadn't legally bound themselves to pay anything if the devotees failed to pay. And if the devotees could not pay the 20,000 balance by the end of the month, they would lose their 5,000 deposit. They could sue for fraud, but court fees would be costly. Then, one by one, Brahmananda, Satswarupa, Kirtanananda, Rayarama, Gargamuni, and others began to look at the letters from Prabhupada and discuss how he had warned them to avoid being cheated. Their greatest blunder, they began to realize, was disobeying his instructions. He had told them not to trust the promises of businessmen, and he had told them that the check should be made only to the owner and not to the financer. Within a few days, further instructions from their spiritual master came in the mail. There were admonishments, but hearing from him, even if he was chastising them, was better than the pain of his hanging up the phone without a word. "But you have not followed my instructions, and now you are in trouble," he wrote to the boys. He wrote Ramaraya, "You are all foolish boys. I repeatedly warned you, even at the last point, that we should not pay the check unless there was agreement between Mr. Tyler and Mr. Hall. The agreement was signed like a marriage ceremony without the presence of the bridegroom. The presence was there, the mistake was there, and now you are repenting." To Satswarupa he wrote, "You have asked me whether the San Francisco branch will pay some money for purchasing the house. But where is your house and where is the purchase? So far, it is talks of Mr. Price and company in which you innocent boys have been entrapped. I do not know how I can help you in your great blunder. I can only hope that Krishna will help you." Unlike the boys and their lawyers, Prabhupada thought that the legal case against the businessman would be a strong one. "I am not a lawyer, but this is the common sense affair. Mr. Hall has taken the money, and he must finance to purchase the house. If he has no money to finance, then it is a cheating case, clear and simple. The culprits, he said, should be brought to criminal court. Their conspiracy and fraud were obvious and could be proven. From the telephonic conversation of Brahmananda, it appears to me an organized cheating case, and you have to face with courage without excusing any one of them. You are not revengeful, but we cannot lose Krishna's money for nothing." The boys had already blundered so much that Prabhupada doubted whether they could tackle the cheaters. But he said they had to try. "Let us have the house or return back the money. In default, there is clear case of cheating. Now you can do as you like." Srila Prabhupada wrote the boy's lawyer relating, relating the history of the case. He also wrote a letter to the financier, the owner, and Mr. Price, threatening to expose everything, including what he alone had seen. that the lawyers involved were also implicated. Brahmananda could barely understand what was going on, but it appeared that Swamiji was going to get results. The boys were fools, certainly, but the businessmen were certainly cheaters, and Swamiji claimed that he could prove it in the court. Finally, the devotees understood their mistake. Um,
Hmm.
the check was already cashed, so they consulted their own lawyer, and he explained them that it is a very weak legal case. Um, so either you have to pay $20,000 by the end of the month or lose the deposit. You can sue them for fraud, but it will be costly because of the court fees and lawyer fees. So Brahmananda, Satsvarupa, Kirtanananda, Rayarama, and Gargamuni started taking all the previous letters of Prabhupada and trying to see how he warned him about the cheating, and they clearly disobeyed his instructions. He told them not to trust the businessman and only write the check to owner and not the financier, and both were broken. And he and later he wrote a letter to them, to each of them, chastising them. So they felt this is much better than the pain of hanging up on the phone without a word. And he wrote to Raya Rama that that you boys acted very foolishly, and you did not properly write the check to the owner, but you wrote to the financier, and also the owner was also not present. And to Satsvarupa, he said that you guys are asking the San Francisco devotees to pay the money, but where is the purchase? You guys did not purchase the house properly. There was a great blunder made, and he also explains them that this is all cheating by the financiers. So this can be proven in the court, and we should take this up to the court. So Brahmananda did not understand what was going on and how to expose the cheating, but now they were understanding what was going on and trying to see what to do.
And Prabhupada is threatening that he will expose, and he's also trying from his part, right?
Yes.
He's saying, I will expose all of you. Nipa?
Hare Krishna. While admonishing his blundering disciples and going fiercely after the cheaters, Srila Prabhupada still remained the ultimate shelter for his foolish boys. In a letter to the 6 trustees of his New York branch, he shed transcendental light into their gloomy minds. Forget the chapter. Take it for granted that Krishna had taken away this money from you for your deliberate foolishness. In future, be very cautious and abide by the orders of Krishna. If you abide by the orders of Krishna, he can give you things that you may need. Be cheerful and chant Hare Krishna without any lamentation. As I've told you several times that my Guru Maharaj used to say that this world is not a fit place for a gentleman. His version is corroborated by the following verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is said like, Yasyasti Bhagavati Akinchana Bhakti Sarvai Gunai Tatra Samasti Sura Harau Bhaktasya Kuto Mahat Guna Manorathan Asato Davato Bhahi. A person who is not in Krishna consciousness has no good qualifications. However, so-called gentleman one may be or academically educated, he is hovering over the mental plane and therefore he must commit nuisance being influenced by external energy. A person who has, however, unflinching faith in supreme personality of Godhead has all the good qualifications of the demigod. In other words, you should not keep your trust on so-called gentlemen of the world. however nicely dressed he may be. In the matter of discharging our mission of Krishna consciousness, we have to meet so many so called gentlemen, but we must be very cautious for dealing with them as we are cautious in dealing with serpents. Now, more than ever, the boys in New York wanted Swamiji to come back. Although most of the talk in the temple was still about real estate, they were holding regular kirtana and lecture programs, and two new boys had joined. Jadurani had finished some new paintings of Lord Vishnu, which now hung in the temple, and she was waiting anxiously for Swamiji to come and see them. Some Swamis had made a new speaker's seat in the temple for Swamiji. They knew they were fools, but they asked him please to come back. He agreed. He set April 9th as a date for his return to New York. But meanwhile, he still had much to do in San Francisco. So in these paragraphs, it says how Srila Prabhupada asked the boys to forget. Little down. Yeah, while admonishing his blundering, uh, going for cheaters, Srila Prabhupada still remained the ultimate shelter for his foolish boys. And in the letter to the trustees of his New York branch, he shed transcendental light into the gloomy minds. He said, forget the chapter and take it that Krishna has taken the money from for the deliberate foolishness done. In the futures, one has to be careful and cautious and abide by the orders of Krishna. He can give you things you need and be cheerful and chant and don't lament. He has told several times, Guru Maharaj used to say that world is not perfect for a gentleman. And then there's a versa. Says um, I don't know the meaning, Prabhu. So should I just translate the English?
Here the meaning. Here this is the meaning.
Yes. Okay. So
basically, it says that the materialistic people, even though they appear like so many good qualifications, they're no good. If they're not devotee, it's not good.
Yes.
Maybe I convey, but.
Yeah, in other words, he says one should not keep your trust on the gentlemen of the world, however nicely they may be dressed and discharging. In the matter of discharging the Krishna consciousness, one have to meet so many called gentlemen, but one has to be very cautious in having dealings with them, and because we have to be cautious like dealings with serpents. And then there's like boys wanted Swamiji to come back to New York. Most of the talk in the temple was still about real estate. They were holding the kirtana and lecture programs also, and two new boys had also joined. Jadurani had finished some paintings of Vishnu, and she was anxiously waiting for Swamiji to come and see them, which were hung in the temple. Some devotees had made new speakers also. They knew they were fools, but they asked him please to come back. So Swamiji agreed to come back on April 9th for his return to New York, but he still had much to do in San Francisco.
Good. But it's so much of pain. Can you believe $5,000? Not only $5,000. Earlier also they gave $1,000, right? $6,000. For Prabhupada's movement in that state, losing $6,000, it's a big. And if you remember, Prabhupada for 50 cents also devotees used to ask. Prabhupada used to go reach out and take 50 cents, give that carefully. He used to manage Krishna's money. Now $6,000 is a big thing. I don't know what's going to happen, but Pranath, you can read.
Hare Krishna. Where am I starting? One day? Is that where it is? Yeah. One day, Malati hurried into Srila Prabhupada's apartment, took a small item out of her shopping bag, and placed it on Prabhupada's desk for his inspection. What is this, Swamiji? Srila Prabhupada looked down and beheld a 3-inch wooden doll with a flat head, a black, smiling face, and big round eyes. The figure had stubby, forward jutting arms, and a simple green and yellow torso with no visible feet. Srila Prabhupada immediately folded his palms and bowed his head, offering the little figure respects. You have brought Lord Jagannath, the Lord of the universe, he said, smiling and bright-eyed. He is Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada beamed with pleasure, while Malati and others sat amazed at their good fortune of seeing Swamiji so pleased. Prabhupada explained that this was Lord Jagannath, a deity of Krishna worshipped all over India for thousands of years. Jagannatha, he said, is worshipped along with two other deities, his brother Balaram and his sister Subhadra. Excitedly, Malati confirmed that there were other similar figures at Cost Plus, the import store where she had found the little Jagannath. And Srila Prabhupada said she should go back and buy them. Malati told her husband Sham Sundar, and together they hurried back and bought the two other dolls in the set. Srila Prabhupada placed the black-faced, smiling Jagannath on the right. In the center, he placed the smallest figure, Subhadra, who had a red, smiling mouth and a rectangular black and yellow torso. The third figure, Balaram, with a white round head, red-rimmed eyes, and a happy red smile, had the forward-jutting arms like Jagannath and a blue and yellow base. Prabhupada placed him next to Subhadra. As Prabhupada looked at them together on his desk, he asked if anyone knew how to carve. Sham Sundar said he was a wood sculptor, and Prabhupada asked him to carve the 3-foot high copies of the little Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra. So this is
Maharani ki jai.
Mother Malati, finding one of Jagannath idols or Jagannath doll, spiritual doll at one of the stores. And she showed it to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada immediately offered his obeisances, respects, and bowed his head, and he told her that this is Lord Jagannath, the Lord of the universe, and was very happy to see, which also pleased very much Mother Malati, seeing Prabhupada so happy. And Prabhupada explained who the deity is, and this Lord Jagannath is worshipped all over India for thousands of years, and that he's also worshipped with the other deities, Balaram and Subhadra. So she went back. Mother Malati confirmed that the store also had the other two deities, and Srila Prabhupada asked her to go back and buy them. And Sham Sundar Prabhu, Malati Madati's husband, they went back both and bought the two others also in the set, and Prabhupada placed them in the proper order with Lord Jagannath on the right, Subhadra Devi in the middle, and Lord Balram on the left. And it's describing how they look and how they smile, and their eyes, beautiful eyes. And and was very much interested in having real deities carved. And Sham Sundar Prabhu was a good sculptor, and Prabhupada asked him to carve the 3-foot deities of Lord Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra.
Malati Mataji reveals later. Basically, she didn't buy, she stole. Jagannath appears like that, the thief. That's a very interesting incident. Okay, more than two. Vasudev, you wanted to say something? Vasudev?
Yes,
Okay, what story you want to say?
I forgot the story.
You forgot the story? How can you? Okay, remember and tell later on the call. Okay, everyone wants to hear. Thank you. More than 2000 years ago, Srila Prabhupada told them that there was a king named Indradumna, a devotee of Lord Krishna. Maharaj Indradumna wanted a statue of Lord as he had appeared when he and his brother and sister traveled on chariots to the holy field of Kurukshetra during a solar eclipse. When the king requested a famous artist from the heavenly planet, Vishwakarma, to sculpture the forms, Vishwakarma agreed on the condition that no one interrupt his work. The king waited for a long time while Vishwakarma worked behind the locked doors. One day, however, the king felt he could wait no longer and he broke in to see the work in progress. Vishwakarma, um, true to his word, vanished, leaving behind the uncompleted forms of the three deities. The king was nevertheless so pleased with the wonderful forms of Krishna, Balram, and Subhadra, and that he decided to worship them as they were. He installed them in a temple and began worshipping them with great opulence. Since that time, Srila Prabhupada continued, Lord Jagannath has been worshipped all over India, especially in the province of Orissa, where there is a great temple of Lord Jagannath at Puri. Each year at Puri, during the gigantic Rath Yatra festival, millions of pilgrims from all over the India come to worship Lord Jagannath, Balram, and Subhadra. As the deities ride in procession on three huge carts, Lord Chaitanya, who spent the last 18 years of his life at Jagannath Puri, used to dance and chant in ecstasy before the deity of Lord Jagannath during the yearly Rath Yatra festival. Seeing this appearance of Lord Jagannath in San Francisco as the will of Krishna, Prabhupada said that they should be careful to receive and worship Lord Jagannath properly. If Swamsundar could carve the forms, Prabhupada said he would personally install them in the temple, and the devotees could then begin worshipping the deities. San Francisco, he said, could be renamed New Jagannath Puri. He chanted Jagannath Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatame. This is the mantra for Lord Jagannath, he said. Jagannath means Lord of the universe. O Lord of the universe, kindly be visible unto me. It is very auspicious that he had chosen to appear here. Yeah, this is very important things to note. That it's Jagannath who decided to appear auspicious in this land of San Francisco. Anyway, Prabhupada mentioned the story how King Indradumna wanted to worship Jagannath, and that form is related to the Jagannath, Baldev, Krishna, Balram, and Subhadra while going to Vrindavan, this incident. So the king has installed the deities that is worshipped all over the India, but especially in Orissa mostly elaborately worshipped. We just finished the Rath Yatra festival recently, right? Recent means I think a couple of days back, Dwadasi. Yesterday sounds appeared like a Purnima to me. The full moon was there. Anyway, today is Purnima. Okay, so maybe we'll see a big moon again. So Lord Chaitanya also, who spent his 18 years, last 18 years, Jagannath Puri, is performing his Leela, who used to dance and sing and dance in front of Lord Jagannath. So Prabhupada says, seeing appearance of Lord Jagannath, if Shyamsundar can carve them, he will install them, and he asked them to carefully worship the Jagannath deity. So that's the beginning of, and he would name it as New Jagannath Puri. Can you believe? New Jagannath Puri, a storefront. I mean, it's like a small rental place also. Still, Prabhupada was so bold to install the deities that time. Nice. Who else is there? Second, you are ready to read?
So yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Shyamsundara bought 3 large blocks of hardwood, and Prabhupada made a sketch and pointed out a number of details. Using the small statue, Syam Sundara calculated ratios and new dimensions and began carving on the balcony of his apartment. Meanwhile, the devotees bought the rest of the tiny Jagannaths from Cost Plus, and it became a fashion to glue a little Jagannath to a simple necklace and wear him around the neck. Because Lord Jagannath was very liberal and merciful to the most fallen, Srila Prabhupada explained that devotees would soon be able to worship him in their temple. The worship of the forms of Radha and Krishna in the temple required very high, strict standards, which the devotees were not yet able to meet. But Lord Jagannath was so merciful that he could be worshipped in a simple way, mostly by chanting Hare Krishna, even if the devotees weren't very much advanced. Prabhupada set March 26th, the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya, as the day for installing the deities. The devotees would have a big feast and begin worshipping Lord Jagannath. Prabhupada said they would have to build an altar, and he told them how to prepare it. While Shyam Sundar hurried to finish his carving, a small splinter lodged itself in his hand and the wound became infected. Finally, Shyam Sundar got blood poisoning and became so sick that he had to go to the hospital. Lord Jagannath was taking away the reactions to Shyam Sundar's previous sinful activities, Prabhupada said. On March 26th, the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada said that during the morning they would stay together in the temple, read about Lord Chaitanya, and hold kirtan. And in the evening, they would have a ceremony for installing Lord Jagannath. Having fasted until moonrise, they would then break fast with a prasadam feast. While Srila Prabhupada entered the temple that morning, he saw the work the devotees had done. The new altar stood in the rear of the room, above where his dais had been. And his dais was now on the right side of the room against the wall. From his seat, he would be able to see the altar very easily. The altar was a simple redwood plank, 7 feet above the floor and fixed between two thick redwood pillars. A canopy covered the place where the deities would stand. Below the altar hung Haridas' painting of Lord Chaitanya and his associates dancing during kirtan. And behind the painting was a Madras backdrop. About 3 feet above the floor, a shelf below the painting held candlesticks and would be used for articles to be offered to the deities. So here, Syam Sundar Prabhu basically brought the large blocks of hardwood, and he was carving in his apartment. Prabhupada gave him a sketch and details as to how to carve. And the other devotees, meanwhile, bought the tiny Jagannaths from the store, and they basically glued the Lord Jagannath to a simple necklace and wore that. And Prabhupada explained that Lord Jagannath was very liberal and merciful, and they could worship him in the temple, whereas to worship Radha Krishna, you would need to follow very high standards, which the devotees were not yet ready. And he also said that Lord Jagannath can be is so merciful that he can be worshipped just by chanting the holy name. And on the he set the appearance of Lord Chaitanya as the day for deity installation, and there would be a big feast. And Prabhupada asked them to build an altar, and he told them how to prepare it. And while Shyam Sundar was finishing his carving, he had a small splinter in his hand, and that became infected, and he got blood poisoning and became sick, so he had to go to the hospital. Prabhupada explained that this is basically the Lord taking away the reactions to Syam Sundar's previous sinful activities. So on the day of Gaur Purnima, Prabhupada basically said that they would first read about Lord Chaitanya, hold kirtan, and the evening they would have the deity installation of Lord Jagannath, and then they would have to fast until moonrise, and after that they'll break the fast with a prasadam feast. So on the day when he entered the temple, he saw that the new altar was set up at the rear, and then his dais had been now moved to the right side, and then the altar was a redwood plank with two pillars as support, and then there was a canopy where the deities would stand, and there was also a shelf to basically for candles and everything and for articles. There was also a painting of Lord Chaitanya, which was below the altar.
Okay, thank you. Prasanthi?
Prabhupada took his seat. As usual, he held Kirtana and chanted one round of japa with the devotees. Then he had Hayagriva read aloud from the biographical sketch of Lord Chaitanya from the first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. But many devotees were sleepy. Despite Hayagriva's reading loudly with force and elocution, although Prabhupada was listening attentively and wanted the others to sit with him and hear about Lord Chaitanya, when he saw that so many were dozing, he stopped the reading and held another kirtana. Then he chanted japa with them for about 15 minutes. All right, he said. He will read again. Who will read? Leelavati's hand flew up urgently. All right. He had he had her sit near his dais, and someone placed a microphone before her. Leelavati's reading presented a contrast to the deep tones of Hayagriva, but she was another scholarly voice. Her careful pronunciation of the Sanskrit words and phrases was pleasing to Srila Prabhupada, and he several times commented, "Oh, very nice." Leelavati was thrilled and read on read on intensely, determined to keep everyone awake. That evening, devotees and hippie guests filled the room to capacity. Prabhupada was present, and the mood was reverential and festive. It was a special event. The just finished deities sat on the altar, and everyone was glancing at them as they stood on their redwood shelf beneath a yellow canopy, their features illuminated by spotlights. The deities wore no clothes or ornaments, but were freshly painted in bright black, red, white, green, yellow, and blue. They were smiling. Srila Prabhupada was also glancing at them, looking up to their high altar. Prabhupada took his seat and he started Kirtana and followed by one round of japa. And he asked Hayagriva to read about Lord Chaitanya from the first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Hayagriva, even though he started reading very loudly, devotees started feeling sleepy and they were not attentive. And looking at this, Prabhupada did one more kirtan and he chanted japa for 15 minutes. And then he wanted someone to come and read, and immediately Leelavati um, raised her hand. And then she started reading it. It was a very scholarly voice. It was in contrast with Hayagriva's deep tone, but she read it very pleasingly, and Prabhupada was very pleased by her voice and commented, "Oh, very nice." And she was very thrilled and continued reading. The room was full with hippies and other guests, and everybody started looking at the deities, freshly painted deities with different colors, and they also the features are illuminated by the spotlights. They are not having the clothes are not given to the offered to the Lord yet, but and no ornaments yet. But they are looking very they are smiling, and Prabhupada is also glancing at them. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. AJ, you please read.
Prabhupada lectured about the four social and four spiritual orders of life described in the Vedic literatures. According to one's quality and work, he has said each person has a certain occupational duty. But the ultimate goal of that duty, he explained, is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. It doesn't matter if one is low-born or poor. Material qualification has nothing to do with spiritual evolution. Spiritual evolution is that with your talent, with your capacity, with your work, you have to satisfy the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada gave the example of Sridhara, an impoverished devotee of Lord Chaitanya who earned the equivalent of less than 5 cents a day, yet offered half his earnings in worship of the Ganges. If one were rich, however, one should still give half his wealth to the service of the Lord. Prabhupada cited Rupa Goswami, who had given 50% of his wealth for Krishna consciousness, given 25% for his family, and saved 25% for emergencies. Suddenly, Prabhupada began speaking about the money his disciples in New York had lost, and 25% for himself, so that in times of emergency, because as soon as money is gone out of my hand, I have no control. We have recently lost 6,000, not here, in New York. So as soon as the check is out of hand, now it is gone. It is gone. Prabhupada gestured to indicate money flying like a bird out of his hand. At this reference to the troubling, entangling affair with Mr. Price and the foolish boys and their hard-earned money gone, Prabhupada paused for a moment. Then he continued with the lecture. Paying attention to Bhagavan, the Supreme Person is practical. Srila Prabhupada said, here's Krishna. Krishna's form is there. Krishna's color is there. Krishna's helmet is there. Krishna's advice is there. Krishna's instruction is there. Krishna's sound is there. Everything Krishna. Everything Krishna. There is no difficulty. So, Prabhupada was talking about, the I guess the importance of tithing and how it doesn't matter, what your level you're born at in life, right? Rich or poor, somewhere in the middle. It doesn't matter in terms of your spiritual evolution. Everybody can move forward on the path. And it's about your talent, not your financial wealth. And using what you do have to satisfy Krishna. And then he's talking about, the devotee who only made 5 cents a day, but a devotee of Lord Chaitanya who made 5 cents a day, but he gave half of that in worship. And then also Rupa Goswami, who had given 50% of his money, of his wealth to Krishna consciousness, and also kept 25 for his family and 25% for emergencies. But on that note, he kind of seemed to lament a little bit about the lost money that the New York devotees had kind of given to Mr. Price and lost as a result. Referring to it like just money flying out of his hands like a bird. But after that, he went back to talking about, back with his lecture, and was just talking about how practical it is to just pay attention to Krishna and notice that Krishna is everywhere and everything is Krishna. And if you keep that in mind, there's no difficulty in life. So
you missed the real fun of New York. The whole story from yesterday we begin. These people gave the money. The guys got them signed. Now after they take this, that give us 20,000 this month, otherwise you lose your deposit. So lost the 5,000 and lost so far another 5,000. So Prabhupada is kind of accept of you did a mistake, you lost everything now. At least you learned this. It was a big thing, $6,000 that time, and Prabhupada's movement is a huge impact. So that's why he's coming into his hand. Can Nipa, you want to read?
Yes, but if you turn your attention to the impersonal and to the super soul in the heart, as the yogis do, then it is very difficult. It is very difficult. You cannot fix your attention to the impersonal. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that Klesho Diktaras Tesham Tesamavi Ta Setasam, those who are attached to the impersonal feature of the absolute truth, their business is very troublesome. It is not like chanting, dancing, and eating. This is very nice, but that is very troublesome. And even if you speculate on the impersonal, the result that is achieved by working hard for many, many lives is that you will have to also eventually come to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada continued describing Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. citing evidence from scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Samhita. The first step in spiritual life, he explained, was to hear from Krishna himself. But Prabhupada warned that if one heard the class and then went outside and forgot, he could not improve. Whatever you are hearing, you should say to others, Prabhupada said. And he gave the example of how disciples were writing back to Godhead when they had heard from their spiritual master. And to speak or write what one has heard, a person has to be thoughtful. You are hearing about Krishna and you have to think, then you have to speak. Otherwise, it will not work. So, Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Dyaha Pujaschcha, and you should worship. Therefore, you require this deity for worship. Worship. We have to think of, we have to speak, we have to hear, we have to worship Pujaschcha. And should we do this occasionally? No. Nityada, regularly. This is the process. So no, so anyone who adopts this process, he can understand the absolute truth. This is the clear declaration of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. Any question? So here it says, if you turn the attention, ping, yeah, I'm here, right? If you turn the attention to impersonals and to the super soul in the heart, as the yogis do, then it is very difficult. You cannot fix your attention to the impersonal. But in Bhagavad Gita, it says that those who are attached to the impersonal feature of absolute truth, their business becomes very difficult. It's not like chanting, dancing, eating. That is nice, but that is troublesome. So one has to speculate. If you speculate on impersonal, then the result that is achieved by working hard is that you will eventually come to Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada continued describing about the personality of Godhead from the scriptures of Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Samhita. The first step he said is to hear Krishna himself. Prabhupada warned that if one heard the class and went outside, will not improve. One has to hear and then say it to others. That is how one will improve. He gave examples of disciples, how disciples were writing back to Godhead what they heard from spiritual master. And to write or speak or write what one heard, a person has to be very thoughtful. So if you are hearing about Krishna, you have to also think about and then speak about it. And you should worship. You require this deity for worship, and we have to think, speak, hear, and we have to worship. And we don't have to do it this regularly. Occasionally, we have to do it regularly. This is like a process. One has to adopt to this process and to understand the absolute truth. And this is the clear declaration of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Prabhuji asked any questions.
Not Prabhupada. Yeah. Okay, who is next? Is next Pranatho? You can read.
Yes. You are hearing about Krishna. Sorry. A young boy raised his hand. Is that where I start, Prabhu?
Yeah, because thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
A young boy raised his hand and began earnestly. Well, you mentioned about how we should follow the supreme law, how we should be like what your spirit tells you, or what your supreme, whatever it tells you. I mean, whatever it tells you. I mean, if you meditate a lot, you feel you should do something. Prabhupada, it is not something, it must be actual fact. Boy, yeah, I mean like Prabhupada, so there's no question of something. Boy, well, I see, Prabhupada, something is vague. You must speak. What is that something? Boy, well, let's say be Prabhupada, that you cannot express. That means you have no idea. So we have to learn. This is the process. I'm speaking of the process. If you want to have knowledge of the absolute truth, the first thing is faith. Then you must be thoughtful. Then you must be devoted. And you must hear from authentic sources. These are different methods. And when you come to the ultimate knowledge from Brahman platform to Paramatma platform, then to the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead, then your duty shall be to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the perfection of your active life. These are the processes, and it is concluded that everyone, never mind what he is, his duty is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how can we satisfy? We have to hear about him. We have to speak about him. We have to think about him. We have to worship him, and that is regularly. This will help you. But if you have no worship, if you have no thought, if you have no hearing, if you have no speaking, and you're simply thinking of something, that something is not God. Boy, I mean, well, I'm so young. I didn't know what I meant. I don't know what. Prabhupada, don't know that I'm speaking, that you have to know by these processes. You're all don't knows. So we have to know. This is the process. Yeah, so question and answer session, am I stopping here, bro? Yeah. So this boy raised his hand and was trying to ask a question, but wasn't clear what to ask, and uttered few words. And Prabhupada is trying to help understand this boy that the spiritual life, or knowing the absolute truth, there's a process that first you have to have some faith and hear from authorized sources, and that gradually when you hear, can you scroll down, bro? So if you have to have knowledge, then you have to have some faith. You have to be devoted and hear from authentic sources, and have to come to that platform of Paramatma, and then to the absolute personality of Godhead. And so Prabhupada is explaining the process here, and that and how to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Is explaining that one should hear, speak, think, and worship him regularly. And without hearing, without speaking, if you just simply think, speculate something, then that is not God. And Prabhupada explains later on. Boy is still not able to express that. Prabhupada said you have to first know what it is, and understand what the process is, what the absolute truth is. Process of we are all don't know, so we have to know. That is the process.
No one accepts, though. We don't know. That's the problem.
Just imagining the position of that boy there.
I mean, that's the fact, in the world, we don't know, but we want to talk a lot. Today also was discussing the similar subject in the temple. 7 billion people, 7 billion opinions, 7 billion wants to talk. They have their own definitions, their own plans. So, okay, young human, who is going to read? Cycling people, you can read.
Young woman, since we don't yet understand the supreme law, because we are young and just new to this, then how can we speak about it? Prabhupada, therefore you have to hear. The first string is Srotavya. You have to hear. Unless you hear, how can you speak? We are therefore giving you facility to hear. You hear and then you can speak. Then you can think. We are giving all facility to hear, to speak, to think, to worship. This is the society's work. Unless you hear, how can you speak? The first task is given, Srotavya. Then Kritavyascha Deyaha Pujayscha Nityada. These are the processes. You have to hear, and hearing you have to repeat, chant, and then you have to think, you have to worship. These are the processes. Upendra, Swamiji, so we have to hear, I understand. But do we speak or do we first listen for a long time and then speak? Prabhupada, no. Why a long time? Suppose you hear 2 lines, you repeat the 2 lines. And aside from everything else, you hear Hare Krishna. So you chant Hare Krishna. What is the difficulty there? Shrotavyaha kirtit vyascha. You have to hear and chant. So if you cannot remember all the topics which we are speaking from the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, you can at least remember this, Hare Krishna. Therefore, it is the easiest process. You hear Hare Krishna and chant Hare Krishna. The other things will come automatically. Now, this is possible for everyone. Even the child can repeat Hare Krishna. What is the difficulty? You hear Hare Krishna and chant Hare Krishna. We are not giving you very difficult or troublesome tasks. Then everything will follow. We are giving you everything. But if you feel in the beginning it is difficult, then you can do this. This is very nice. Chant Hare Krishna. You are doing that actually, hearing and chanting. This process will help you. It is the basic principle of advancement in spiritual life. Without hearing, we shall simply concord, waste our time and mislead people. We have to hear from the authoritative sources. So here, a young woman asks a question that because they are so young and they don't understand the supreme law and they are just new to all of this, how can we speak about it? And Prabhupada stresses the importance of hearing, saying that first you have to hear, and then once you hear, you repeat and chant, and then you have to worship. That those are the processes. So then Upendra asks a question, saying that do we first listen for a long time and then speak, or do we speak right away? Prabhupada again says you don't have to wait for a long time. If you hear a little bit, you repeat that. And he says, if you are hearing about Hare Krishna, chant about Hare Krishna. That is very straightforward. What is the difficulty? Even a boy can repeat Hare Krishna. And basically, they also says that in the difficult, it may in the beginning it may be difficult, but then you hear and chant Hare Krishna, and once you do that regularly, then everything will follow. And that is the main purpose of the society, that it provides a platform for hearing, for chanting, for worshipping, and for preaching. When we hear, we should always hear from authoritative sources and not make up our own theories and mislead people. And if you do that, you'll advance in spiritual life.
Nice. So hope isn't it beautiful? So you don't have to wait for 1,000 years or 10 years to speak. Whatever you heard, you just speak. Very simple. And if you knew, even if you cannot speak that much, at least just say Hare Krishna to everybody. I heard somebody told me that recently. Someone just glorified the place, and he got very inspired. Just hearing the glorification of the temple or movement, somebody got very inspired. That's it. So can't we do all? Pick the phone. That way, I went to this place. I go to this place like this. It works. Seems like it works. I think this is a very good thing. We can simply. We just speak good about Krishna, and it's not even Krishna says in 12.8 or 9. Okay, even if you cannot do much, it will just speak good about the movement, and so it will enter into their heart, and one day this will work. They'll be attracted to Krishna. You think everybody can see now? At least we try speak someone about about Krishna. We can sit at home, and people have so much of gossip. But if you just speak a few people in a day about this place, it's going to grow, isn't it? And whether they come to our temple or not, at least the positive thoughts will come about Krishna consciousness in their heart, and that will bring a big change, transformation. That itself is a progress. I hope this we can remember this Whoever you speak, just talk about Krishna, come to temple, we like this nice programs. That's very simple thing we can do, even if you cannot preach. Okay, just thought is a good thing to do. Looks like we are going to learn a lot of things while reading this. That's it. Take in the mood of learning also all this how Prabhupada taught all these things. Where we are? Okay, here. No, this one done, right?
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada paused.
This one. Yeah. Who is the next person is reading? I don't know who is supposed to read. AJ, you can read.
Srila Prabhupada paused. The philosophical talk had been rigorous, lasting about 45 minutes. He wasn't tired. He could have gone on, but now he wanted to conduct the day of the installation. Everything necessary for spiritual life was here: the temple, the devotees, the books, the deity, prasadam. He wanted these young people to take advantage of it. Why should they remain living like animals and thinking of spiritual life as a vague groping for something? They should take advantages of Krishna's mercy and be successful and happy. And for this, Prabhupada was their tireless servant. Prabhupada. Sahayagriva, come here. Prabhupada had the devotees arrange for a large candle on a plate. The ceremony he had planned would be a simple one, with devotees and guests one after another coming up and offering the flame in circles before the Jagannath deities. This should be... Oh,
Nice.
This should be lighted up, Srila Prabhupada said. And when there is kirtan, one must be doing like this before the deity. Srila Prabhupada moved his hands around in a circle before the deity. You see? Hagriva, yes. Prabhupada, yes, with the kirtan. And then when one person is tired, he should hand it over to another person, devotee. When he is tired, he should give to another, as long as the kirtan will go on. This should be done with the kirtan just now. Do you follow? Yes, you begin. And when you are tired, you hand over to another. It will go on like that. Srila Prabhupada from his seat guided Hayagriva in approaching the deity with the lit candle. Some of the girls tittered with nervous expectation. Before the deity, Srila Prabhupada said, "All right, now better begin kirtan." Prabhupada began playing cartels and singing the Hare Krishna mantra to the popular melody he had introduced in America. Just in front, he called out, gesturing to Hayagriva to stand more directly before the deities. Devotees and guests began rising to their feet and dancing, arms raised, bodies swaying rhythmically back and forth as they faced the bright personal forms of the deities and chanted. Colored lights within the canopy began flashing intermittently blue, red, and yellow, highlighting the extraordinary eyes of Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram. Mukunda, who had arranged the lights, smiled and looked to Swamiji, hoping for approval. Prabhupada nodded and continued forcefully singing Hare Krishna. The young hippies were enthusiastic in singing and dancing, knowing that kirtan usually lasted an hour. Some had grasped the Swami's words when he had spoken of fixing the mind on the personal form of the Supreme Lord, and they had understood when he had looked up at the deities and said, "Here is Krishna." Others hadn't followed, but thought that it was great and blissful to sing Hare Krishna and look at the grinning, big-eyed deities up on the altar amid the flowers and billowing incense. Prabhupada watched with pleasure as one person after another took a turn at offering the candles before Lord Jagannath. This was a simple procedure for installing the deity. Although in big temples in India, the installation of the deity was a complex, exact procedure requiring several days of continuous rituals directed by highly paid priests. In San Francisco, there were no Brahmana priests to pay, and many of the other standards would be impossible to maintain. Yeah, so Prabhupada was directing Hayagriva on kind of the process and what they need to do. Well, I guess starting with the first one, Prabhupada said, thinking, he's like, hey, everything that we need for devotional life is right here, right? Yeah, the temple, the devotees, the books, the deity, and prasadam. And he said this is where he wanted people to take advantage of this, and since it was there, because it's right there. Why grope and grasp for answers when you have it all right in front of you already? And then they were talking about, he was instructing Hayagriva on kind of the ritual and the process for the deity installation, and, how they should be, circling the candles in front of the deities. And you should just keep going throughout the kirtan. And if you get tired, give it to the next guy, and they keep going the entire time. you know, he was just being very exact in how he wanted it to be, as where he wanted Hayagriva to stand, and you know, yeah, where he wanted him to stand and all that. And then the kirtan began, and he's chanting Hare Krishna, and people get up and start dancing, and you know, the light show that Mukunda had put together was going off nicely, and some folks were, you know, taking Prabhupada's instruction on, you know, to focus on the personal form of the deities, where other people were just happy to be involved and you know, just enjoyed chanting and watching you know, watching the light bounce off of the deities and just, you know, taking it all in.
You finished?
I think so. Yeah. Unless I missed something.
I'm amazed the way the data installation took place. So simple, Prabhupada made, you know, because of the everybody is so new,
Yeah.
and it's perfect arrangement. Jagannath is can be worshipped by anybody. Oh, it's unbelievable things.
Well, when I went to that to the, you know, part of that Hanuman installation at the Hindu temple, I think I got there on the last day of 7 or 8 days already, right? And you know, of constant rituals and you know, with more to come first. And then this one, it's like, just circle the candle, circle the candle, and we're good.
And that too, when you're seeing the Hanuman, I'm sure it's not a installed deity. Like a Hanuman deity is the way it is not called installed deity. In fact, the temple deity, when installed, is more elaborate and so many things are involved. Now here with Jagannath and with this, you know, newly converted devotees who are hippies before, who just circle the lamp. That's everybody's offering the lamp. Is how he made it so wonderful, you know. But now they know. So now they know, you know, all this, those who learned now, they know elaborate worship now, you know, but they can see how Prabhupada introduced slowly with patience. It's a great experience. Well, with this, we will end for tonight. You know, we are hoping tomorrow we'll have a memorial day ceremony. I will text it, post everyone, so we can participate tomorrow. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Prabhupada Lilamrita ki jai. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, it's Hare Krishna.
Hey, Christian, good to see you today. I heard Jeremy stuck around for a bit, huh?
Yeah, he did. Where are you? Yeah, he did. He had a good time.